All right, guys. So thank you guys for coming to the Financial Aid Friday Part 1, Session 3, the best session. Don't tell the other two sessions what I said. So we're going to talk about FAFSA and financial aid. And if you could do me a favor, can you close that door for me? So some of you guys were able to come here for financial aid night. So I'm not going to be able to go through the whole presentation. You can crack it too. I'm not going to go through the whole FAFSA presentation because that whole presentation is like an hour, hour and a half. But I do have the video, so I can definitely send you that. I sent it to you the first time I sent the thing out. That gives all the specific details. But the stuff that I'm going to go over today basically is like the cliff notes, the most important. What do y'all call them? Spark notes now? Is that what they call now? The most important facets. And then just some other stuff that other people never share with you. Okay. So that's what we're going to go over. All right. So when you guys are getting ready for college, we're always talking to you about college fit, making sure that you do some research to make sure that the school that you are looking at fits what you want. Not that you're going somewhere because so-and-so told you to go there because your friend is going there or because your boo goes there. Because if y'all break up, you're going to be stuck seeing each other for the next however many years, right? So you want to make sure that they have the majors that you want, that you like the vibe, which is the most important, that the eateries, all that stuff that you're looking for is important. But financial aid, if you can't afford to go or if you can't make the numbers work, you're not going anyway, right? So that's why you want to make sure that you take this part seriously, get all of your paperwork done, and then get those scholarships so that you can try to go where you're supposed to go. Because a lot of your parents will say, you do what you're supposed to do and we'll make it work. In the old days, that used to be the case. But now college is so expensive. Sometimes they're not able to make it work. And it's not their fault because college is just too expensive. All right. So I want to make sure you pay attention to that. Do what you need to do so you're not stuck in a whole bunch of debt. Okay. All right. So most of you got handouts. You can either get them on your way out if you didn't get them. But these are the handouts that I have for you today. So we have the FSA ID card. This is going to be helpful. How many of you guys did your FAFSA already? Not judgment. I just want to know. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You started. Did you have your hand up? Okay. So half of you. So if you haven't started it, this card will give you the steps so that you can create your FSA ID, and I'll explain that to you. And then also the website to FAFSA to do your actual application is on here. Okay. So you got that. Then you got your FAFSA tip sheet. So this sheet tells you all of the paperwork that you need to get the application done. All right. And there's an English one and a Spanish one. I'm out of Spanish ones, but if you need one, I can email you a PDF of that. You have your PA student guide. This guide gives you all the information that you need to know about how FAFSA works and how FIA, the state agency, how that works, how they give out money and special programs that they have for students who are in certain situations or certain circumstances that may be eligible for more money. Okay. And then lastly, I didn't give this to everybody, but I have plenty of these. These are the actual directions on how to fill out the FAFSA. Okay. So they're in English on one side, Spanish on the other side. The 1-800 number for FAFSA is at the bottom. They're open every single day, even Saturday and Sunday. During the week, they're open till 11. On the weekend, they're open till 5. Okay. So, and they also have people who speak Spanish. So we will be having a financial aid help night on December the 14th. So if you want to go ahead and register for while you're in here, the link is on the screen. It's going to be here in the cafeteria. Normally when we have it, everybody can come. We don't do attendance and all that stuff. This year we have to take attendance first. Number one, because even though we're having it in the cafeteria, I had to put together a little special map to show how I'm social distancing. I'm not trying to get in trouble. So I'm limited to 40 families. The other reason why I'm limited to 40 is because normally the people who come and help us do it bring a whole crew with them. And this year the crew was one person plus me. Okay, so as fabulous as I think I am, I'm not that fabulous. So to be me, that person, and then it's another person who speaks Spanish and knows how to do the FAFSA. So we want to make sure we give you guys quality time. But you can do this on your own and try to do this ahead of time. And then if you still want to meet with me individual or as a group, just let me know. All right. So there's the link up there for the event. All right. All right. So what is financial aid? So what I'm going to do is show you guys a brief video that gives some information. And I'm going to make sure my recording is right because now I'm going to mute myself.
Today we're going to be talking about different financial aid options that are available to you. So there's a few different types of financial aid available. There are grants and scholarships, federal work study, and student loans. But we're actually going to start with the good stuff first, the free money. Grants and scholarships are what we refer to as gift aid. So grants are money that does not have to be paid back, and grants are available from the federal or the state government. They are based on financial need. So it's going to be based off of the financial aid information that you submit on your financial aid paperwork. Scholarships is also free money, but scholarships are based off of merit. So they could be for a variety of different reasons: academics, sports, or the student meeting some type of unique characteristic. There are two other types of financial aid: federal work study and student loans. Work study is a program where the school or the college that you're attending may be able to coordinate a job for you, and then the money that you make from that job, you can then use that to help pay for your education. Student loans is the other type of self-help aid, and student loans are loans that do have to be paid back. Student loans can either be taken out either in the student's name or the parent's name, and we'll give you more details about all of these different programs. So in regards to grants and scholarships, the federal government offers two major grant programs: the Federal Pell Grant and FSEOG. Both of those grant programs are going to be based off of financial need, so you will need to complete the free application for federal student aid in order to see if you qualify. The state of Pennsylvania also offers several different grant programs, such as the Pennsylvania State Grant and several other programs that are based on the student meeting a unique characteristic. You'll also need to make sure that you complete the FAFSA form in order to see if you're eligible for any of those grant programs. Now, when we talk about scholarships, a good rule of thumb is that you should definitely try to focus in on local scholarships that may be available in your area. If you are a senior in high school, you can check with your counselor at the school to see what local scholarships may be available in your area. Those scholarships are going to have less competition, so it's a good idea to focus on those first. You can also check with the college that you're going to be attending to see if they have scholarships that you can apply for. Finally, then you want to focus in on national scholarship offerings, which you can find on scholarship databases online. Federal Work Study is the program where the school can coordinate a job for you. Let's say you could be working maybe in the library or maybe the cafeteria, and then that money will then be able to help you pay for your cost of education. Some things to keep in mind about work study is that it's not available at all schools, so you'll definitely want to make sure you check with your school to see if it's available. Also, the money that you can get from that is going to vary depending on the hours that you work and things like that. So you'll also want to talk about that with the school if you're interested in pursuing that. Also, you do have to complete the free application for federal student aid in order to qualify for work study. Now let's talk about student loans. So student loans are called federal direct loans, and they're available from the federal government. Federal direct loans can be taken out either by the student or the parent. Student loans do not require a credit check, while Parent Plus loans do. So you'll want to make sure that you keep that in mind when you're applying. Any student that wants to get a federal direct loan will be able to do that, and the amounts that you can borrow are based on the grade level that you're going to be when you're in school. You can also find out more information about these programs on studentaid.gov. Keep in mind too, loans do have to be paid back, so make sure that you don't borrow too much in order to make sure that you're not borrowing more than what you need to pay for your education. Thank you and good luck.
All right. So she gave you pretty much the basic information that you needed to know about those items. So I'm gonna go through this, and again, I'll send you guys all this video on Monday. Okay. So the first key that you want to make sure that you do to get through the process is you want to create your FSA ID. That's your federal student aid ID. So what it is a fancy word for a username and a password, right? But what makes this different when you borrow money from the government, sometimes it comes from different departments or different sources, but it's still government related. So that way, when you go into your account, you don't have to create an account for each individual one. They're kind of all housed together, right? So each person, you need to have an FSA ID, and your parent needs to have an FSA ID. Okay. And so you have to have a social security number to get the FSA ID. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. The second thing, of course, is you need to do the actual application. And so you need to get this done, as she said, to make sure that you're eligible for any loans or any grants. So anytime, of course, we hear the word grant or scholarship, those are good words. Why are they good words? Because it's free, right? So you always want to hear the word grant or scholarship because those loans have to be paid back. And then the third thing you want to make sure you always do is your FIA. So you only have to do that FIA state grant application one time. Every year you do have to do the FAFSA, but the FIA, you don't have to do that every year. It's done in one time. So you want to do it immediately after you do the FAFSA. That's the best time. So when you do your FAFSA, when you get to the last page, it's going to give you two options: to add another person, like your parent or guardian, if they're going to be in school, or a sibling, or to do the state grant application. So you want to do it right away, because what it's going to do is pull your information and start the FIA account for you. So you don't have to type in your name and address and all that stuff. And then it'll take you another 5 or 10 minutes to finish that. It'll ask you information about your parent or your guardian as far as your residency in Pennsylvania. Okay. If you don't do it after that, what do you think is going to happen? If you don't do it immediately and you close the account, what's going to happen? Just real basic stuff. Not a. Yeah. And what else are you going to do? You're probably going to forget, right? Sometimes I'll leave the room and forget why I left the room, right? You're going to forget. So you want to try to make sure you do it right away. All right. So these are some items that I snatched from the FAFSA IG page. So what happens to when you do your FAFSA, and where does the information go? So that information is shared with all of the financial aid offices that you put on your application. So you can list up to 10 schools on that application. You don't have to be finished with the application. Just put them on there. When the FAFSA is done and it's processing, they will send it to each individual school, right? It's like an email. So once they open it, it can't be pulled back, right? So if you have more than 10 schools, then you're going to wait like 5 days until FAFSA says your form is processed. Then you can take some of those schools off and put more schools on, okay? How can I check to see if the FAFSA is processed? You can simply just go on your account, and when you go on your account, it will give you what your status is. Okay, so after that is processed, you'll get a student aid report, which is something that you're going to need in the future, because there are some scholarships that you will apply for that will be asking for a student aid report. Also, the student aid report will tell you how much money you're eligible for in grants and possibly loans. Okay, now what do you do if you've been selected for verification? So verification means that your school is checking to make sure that your FAFSA information is correct. So students are always randomly selected. So don't freak out when you get the letter in the mail or in your email. It will be 10 pages. And everybody gets it and they freak out like, what happened? What did I do wrong? In most cases, you didn't do anything wrong. They just randomly selected you. But unfortunately, in the past, students who are either first generation or low income students have been randomly selected more than other people. Okay. So you may hear that more of your friends or students that you see here may have been selected for verification. So the 10-page paper that you get, basically all it is the first 2 pages are some instructions and some random stuff. And then the next 7 pages is literally your information and some empty boxes next to it for you to make corrections. That's all. Sometimes there is an error. The most common error is if you have been doing the FAFSA, you did the whole thing for you and your parent, or your parent did the whole thing. Sometimes student may put the parent's income information in the student income box. So FAFSA was like, Nancy, how you make $40,000? Why are you in school legally? How you do that? Right? And it's most of the time people just mistakenly did that. All right. So don't freak out. Answer the questions. If you have any questions, come see me and I'll help you sort that out. If you make a mistake on the form, if it's like right after you did the FAFSA or in a few weeks and the school hasn't contacted you, like you haven't been accepted, you can go in and fix that mistake. But if you've already been accepted to the school, or if it's a big thing that needs to be fixed, you want to get in contact with the financial aid office at your school and let them fix it. Because sometimes when you go in and fix it on your own, if it's a big thing, they may think you're doing a little something shady. So just let them go in and fix that for you. Okay. How do you decide if you're going to accept aid and what you're going to accept? So all of you, when you do your FAFSA, in most cases will be offered loans. So let's say the maximum amount of loans that most of you will be offered is $5,500 for the first year. You don't have to take the whole loan amount out. You can take some of it, all of it, or none of it. Okay, so we'll talk about that in the next session. How do you get your money? So the financial aid at each office will explain how you get your money. And we'll talk about that on next week. So I forgot to tell you, next week we're going to talk about the financial aid award letter, how to read those, how to figure out who's giving you the best deal. And then the next session is going to be about scholarships. Okay. Now, these are 3 potential issues that you need to consider. So there are sometimes some issues with Social Security numbers, specifically for students who are undocumented or DACA students. So if a student has a Social Security number and the parent does not have a Social Security number, you may do the FAFSA. So the student's going to do their FSA ID and put a Social Security number in there. The parent is going to fill out the application, but they cannot create an FSA ID because you have to have a social. So when they do the application for the parent that does not have a social, they're going to put zeros in for the Social Security number. Okay, you guys got that? Then at the end, they're going to ask you to sign it. So the student has the ID, can sign it with their FSA ID. The parent, since they don't have a Social Security number, they're going to be motioned to print out a signature sheet page that they have to sign and mail back. So that's another reason if a student is undocumented or is a DACA student and they want to and they have to have the signature sheet, you want to give time for it to go in the mail, them to get the information and process it. Okay. Also, because of we'll talk about the verification in a minute because I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, if the student doesn't have a social and the parent does not have a social, then that family will not be able to do a FAFSA. Okay, because the federal government, you have to have a social. There are plenty of students, though, that are undocumented or DACA students that do go to 4-year colleges because some 4-year colleges, if they meet a certain criteria, some of them may have them fill out the paper application and mail that in. It's a whole bunch of different things that they can look at and some sources for some scholarship money. Okay. Now, another thing that you want to think about is the IRS data retrieval tool. So what that is when you do your FAFSA, when you get to the part where you have to put in financial information, they're going to ask you, do you want to use this tool to pull your tax information from the federal government, and they will put it in there for you. That's what you want. You want to use that button because otherwise you have all these other boxes and sometimes it can get a bit confusing. Okay. So these are some things that are kind of not written down anywhere. And this is another reason why I wanted to meet with you to share this information. When you use that tool, it's going to make it easier, one, because you don't have to type in all those numbers, right? The second thing is it's going to cut down on mistakes because it's being pulled from the federal government. The third thing is it will help you avoid verification because most of the time with verification, they want to make sure that people are putting in the information correctly and that they're not trying to shade the government. But if it's being pulled from the IRS, it's going to be correct as far as they're concerned. The fourth thing is you want to make sure, before I get to the fourth thing, also, There are two caveats to that. If your parents do their taxes together, if you live with two parents and they do their taxes together, then they can use that form. But if your parents are married and they file their taxes separately, they can't use it. It's an IRS rule. I don't know why. Okay. Now, if you live with one parent, then that parent can do it because FAFSA goes by who you live with 51% of the time. So if you have a parent that lives in another household, they're not going to ask for that person's information for the FAFSA. Okay. The fourth thing, and this to me is the most important, when you guys are using this, you also want to get a copy of the 2020 tax return for you and the one for your parent, okay? Just to have handy because you want to make sure, they want to make sure when they link that account that it's you. So they want the information to be the same. So when you type in your address on that form, look on your tax return and type it in exactly as it is. So if you live at 444 Cherry Lane, Lane, but your tax return says Cherry Lane, LN, you need to type what's on that form. Okay. If you've moved, use the address that's on your tax return. If you have two last names, but sometimes you use one, but if on that form you use two last names, then just type it exactly as it sounds because otherwise it's not going to connect.
If you don't live with like a parent, you live with a guardian, and like, don't you put on your FAFSA whoever claims you your on their taxes, or no? It's still with like
that used to be an old rule, but unfortunately, next year they're going to be changing the FAFSA. They're going to be bringing that back in, and there's some confusion and some drama with that because we're upset about that as far as us to help you guys do FAFSAs, right? Because some people may live with their parent and live with their grandparent, yeah, and the grandparent is claiming the student. Well, grandparents can't be used as a parent on the FAFSA. So that's one of the main things that we're still trying to debate with now. So that's going to be a special case. And there's a whole bunch of students here that have special cases. So we'll talk to you about those on the side. But that's the most popular question that people ask. For your fee estate grant. Oh, did I answer your question? Mm-hmm. Okay. So your fee estate grant, once you've officially completed the FAFSA, we talked about that. We talked about how it's highly recommended that you do it right away. Also, on your FIA, you can only list one school on the state grant application. You want to make sure that you put the most expensive Pennsylvania school on there. Even if you're not going there, just put that there. If you're going out of state and that's your first choice, don't put that because you can't use this money out of state. And we'll talk about that next week. All right, so you got 3 phases here. So phase 1 is sending the information. So you have your FAFSA that you're going to do, your FIA that you're going to do, and then there's something else called the CSS profile. That's something that's optional. So there are about 250 colleges across the country that use that document. And basically what it is another financial aid. Don't they just make this complicated? It's annoying. I get mad every time I talk about this. They want y'all to be great, but then they keep throwing all this extra stuff in here. But anyway, I digress. So it's an extra long financial aid application. And they ask all these specific questions. So if I were you, if you have not done your FAFSA yet, check to make sure that you have any schools that requires this form. And if you do that CSS first because it is long and it is very detailed. So by the time you get to your FAFSA, I guarantee you pretty much every item that you need for the FAFSA, you already put on CSS profile. It'll just make it easier for you. Okay. Phase 2 is the waiting. We hate waiting. They torture y'all. They torture us. Okay. So back in the old days, 5 years ago, the FAFSA opened up on January 1st, and then everybody got their financial aid letters in March and April. A couple of years ago, they changed it to October 1st. So some colleges with resources, they got people together to process people's letters early. So some schools will send out letters for financial aid in December. So then you get your financial aid letter from such and such a school Then you mad because these other people aren't sending your letters. You think they're lazy. You think they don't want you, and you're getting upset. Well, most of the colleges are still on that old window. So most of your letters will not come until February, March, and April. Okay, so just keep that in mind because these colleges will send y'all these letters telling you hurry up and drop your deposit, drop your deposit. You have until May to do that. Okay, two things you want to make sure that you do. You want to make sure that you order what's called a tax transcript, and I'll email you all this information. If you get selected for verification, in most cases, they're going to ask you for a copy of a tax transcript. What a tax transcript is proof that either you did file your taxes or you didn't file your taxes. So you just go online, you can request it digitally, but in most cases, I'm telling you, that thing is broken. The second thing is you can have it sent to you in the mail. You'll get it in 2 weeks. So go ahead and do it now. And that way, if they ask you for it, you have it. The second thing is when you do your savings and your checking on the FAFSA, they want to know you're going to have to give them proof that on that date, that's what you had. So either do a screenshot of your information or download a bank statement, the date of when you did your taxes. Okay. Because that way you'll just have it handy. All right. Phase 3 is decisions. And I'm going to talk fast because the clock is ticking. Colleges will send out your financial aid letters between December and April. We talked about that. And those deposits that they're asking for are non-refundable. And they're going to cost you anywhere between $250 to $1,000. In most cases, it's going to cost you $300, and it's non-refundable. So that's why you want to wait until you get all of your letters back because you know how y'all do. You get accepted to your first choice. You all excited. You got the bandana on, the t-shirt, the socks, the bedspreads, all that kind of stuff, right? Then you get the letter and you're like, ooh, I can't afford to go here. Now you're embarrassed, first of all, right? You already dropped your deposit that you're not going to get back. Then after you get your letters, you see where you can really afford to go. Then you got to drop another deposit. You could have just given me that money. I'd have bought some shoes or something, right? So just be careful with that. You have until May 1st to make that decision, okay? Now, a couple of other random facts and we'll be done. At some point when you look at that form, I'll send you this chart to determine if you're an independent or a dependent student. Most of you guys are a dependent student, meaning that you depend on your parent or guardian. But there are some students with special circumstances. Some people are in foster care. Some people are adopted. Some people have a legal guardian. Some people are not staying with their parents and the school district knows it and it's kind of a legal thing, right? So they can apply as an independent student. We already talked about undocumented students getting money for college. Okay. There's no such thing as making too much money to apply. Some people or their parents will say, we're not going to do it because we make too much money. And it may be true that you make too much money to get state or federal grant money, but you still may be eligible for federal loan money. Okay. And so even though no one wants a loan, a federal loan is better to have than a private bank loan. And it's not that the bank loan is a bad thing. It's just that their interest rates are higher and they have less options for you later if you need to try to, change some things around and change your payments. Okay. 3 other facts that you need to know. If the school is a good fit, keep it on your list regardless of the cost. So if you see that school costs $70,000, it just hurt my teeth to say that. $70,000, right? But everything is perfect, especially if your grades are stellar. You don't know how much scholarship money you're going to get from that school or how much scholarship money you're going to get outside of the school. And it may actually be less expensive to go there than it is to go to one of the public schools. And we'll talk about that next week. Okay. We talked about getting into your top choice. Be comfortable and making sure when you put that list together that your top 3 choices are places that you will be fine going to. If for some reason, now I'm rooting for you, I want you to get into your first choice and get all the money. But that's not going to be the case for everybody, right? So you need to be comfortable taking your second or third choice. A lot of people just put one choice on there and the rest of the schools, they're just doing that just to appease me. their counselor, and their parents. Okay. Also, you want to use a non-school email address for anything that's college related, because when you graduate in June, that school email gets cut off, and you want to make sure that you're able to get your information. Okay. So that is it for that. So I'm going to stop for questions, but I'm going to go ahead and stop this recording. Okay.